Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Bawa. This is my first podcast, and today I'm joined by Victoria, who is studying viticulture. Welcome,
Thanks for
Victoria.
having me.
Yes. So for someone hearing the word viticulture for the first time, what does it mean?
Well, I guess we all have had grapes, I hope. We all had grapes at one point in our life, and it's all surrounding grape growing. So from the little baby plant until like the fruit grows, everything surrounding that. So basically the plant.
Okay, so
Grape
everything
wine.
regarding the grapes.
Everything regarding the grapevine, I would say, yeah.
Oh, nice. Yep. So you are a student at the moment studying masters.
Yes.
So what does your everyday look like?
Well, currently I'm doing the research for my master thesis here in Australia. Weather always influences your day, of course, and the seasonality of grape growing, of course, as well. Like right now we're harvesting, but before that we did a lot of measurements in the vineyards with heat stress and drought stress. So it's very variable, and I think that's also what I kind of like about it, because you work towards something, you measure things in different, like it's not always the same. It repeats itself a little bit over the seasons, but overall it's always an adventure. Even in winemaking, like when you go from growing your grapes until you get your wine, every season in viticulture is different. Every year the grapes ripen at a different time, even earlier and earlier now, but I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, nice. So how is this 2026 season going so far?
Well, I have no experience, honestly, with the grape growing season here in Australia, so that was my first time here, and I think we were a little bit delayed because we had a very cold spring here. It was raining a lot, which was good, so not as much drought, but then we had some hot days which affected the vines a lot. So if you did not give them any help, the leaves were burned as well as the berries, so this decreased a lot of the yield for the grape growers, which is not great, of course. We want to keep our yield, and but we were still late, even though we had hot days. But overall, I think the season was not very typical here. It was not as hot as it usually is.
Oh, nice. So tell us about how did you get into this field? What made you interested in studying viticulture?
Well, my parents at home, we do have some vineyards. Because we do have, in Austria we call it Buschenschank, which is similar to a wine tavern. We do make our own wine, our own ham and bacon and stuff. So we're only allowed to sell cold foods and wine there, and we do have vineyards, and of course I always joined my father in the vineyard, and I always loved the work. I never complained. I wanted to join. I was like, can I join? So that's why I was like, okay, I like this, so maybe there is something that I can do with this in the future. And then I found a study, like a bachelor's that was international wine business, which got me into like studying wine a bit. And then afterwards I was like, maybe, because I like the business side and I like the marketing part, I was like, okay, maybe I'll continue with marketing. So I did, and I still love the marketing part from wine, especially because I think it's beautiful to share all the flavors wine has to offer. We sometimes just drink because we drink socially and we don't think of what we consume. And I think that's like what you can use marketing for as well in wine, that to show that there's more to wine than just the drink, you know. You can enjoy it, you can like actually experience wine a bit more and experience all the flavors, just like with food.
So people often mix viticulture and winemaking. So what's the difference between both?
Well, viticulture is everything that happens outside in the vineyard. Everything to do with the plant. And winemaking is once you harvested the fruit and you make the wine, basically. That's what it says, word for
So
word.
viticulture is everything that happens outside in the fields, and winemaking is what happens inside in the factory or...
Of course, winemaking is then affected like by which quality of grapes I'm getting from the vineyards, but they're both separate things, separate expertises, I would say.
Yeah.
Even though both know stuff from each other, but
At what point did you realize how complex this work actually is? Because people, when they think about viticulture, they might think it's just harvesting grapes and then sending it to probably people who make wine, but I'm sure it's much more complex than that.
Yeah, I think it was in my bachelor's, in my bachelor studies when we first had the first lectures on like viticulture stuff and also winemaking, so a lot of anatomy and stuff, so how the plant actually works. I was like, okay, actually that's not just as simple, and plants are fascinating. So and I really like that. And then spending outside time with the plant, I don't know, makes you connect to it differently.
Yeah, that's very nice. So you have seen vineyards in Austria and you have seen vineyards here. What do you think is the difference between viticulture in Austria and viticulture here in South Australia?
I think the main difference is, well, there are different rootstocks, but the main difference is that we have a very different climate.
Yeah.
Not very, but like in Austria, it's not as hot yet.
Yeah.
We are getting hotter and hotter years, but we're not that, like, it's not as dry in Austria, so we have more disease pressure, but we don't have as much sunburn. But we do get that more and more, as well as berry shriveling, and so that's basically why I came here, because I was like, it's a future problem we will have in Austria for sure. Climate change is happening, so why not do your research with the Austrian grape varieties here in Australia with heat stress and drought stress, and see how certain things help them adapt to the stress.
Oh, nice. You mentioned a bit about the temperature and diseases with the wines. So is it when it's hotter, then there are more chances that wine fruit will get diseased, or is it more chances in colder climate?
You have different kind of disease pressures, I would say. Like in hot climate, you will have sunburn, and then you might have more insects.
Yes.
And in cold climate, you have other kinds of diseases, more from humidity and those kind of things. And
that's interesting. So yes, we all know climate change and things happening around the world, temperatures rising. So what have you found so far about temperatures, and what impacts are they making on viticulture or grapes?
Well, other than sunburn, we do have a lot of yield loss. We did have 2 years ago like 50% of grapes, like we had only 2 years ago we had only about 50% of the grapes that we had the year before. So almost like
so yield decreased by 50%.
The yield decreased a lot, not everywhere. Some vineyard, like viticulturalists reported more, some less. And of course it always depends on the region, but we did have a lot less yield. And I think the plants are struggling, of course, a lot with water, and that's why I also came here to research that. So other than yield loss, we, as I said, we do have a lot of sunburn, and of course the ripening that is happening is completely different as the sun like helps it's completely different, and we do get like a big increase in sugar quicker. That's why we of course harvest earlier as well.
Yep.
I mean, some people like to have vacation afterwards, but it's not the perfect like balance you get then in the end with the acidity you have in your grapes as well as the phenolic compounds. And one thing we also see a lot that I also mentioned earlier is berry shriveling. In Austria we see it a lot in the grape variety Blaufränkisch.
Yeah.
And for this, at one point the sugar stops to build up and the berries just shrivel, like they get smaller, they start looking like raisins, which sometimes we think, oh yeah, great, more sugar content, but that's not really what's happening. And you cannot really see the shriveling in the early parts. It's not very visible, and you might think, oh yeah, I'm gonna leave them on for a bit longer and they're gonna get riper and riper, but that's not actually what is happening, and then you have more acidity in your wine and different compounds which you might not want.
You mentioned something about stressing in wines. What is that about?
Well, of course, the wine, when it, like, the plants are not stupid. If they're getting hot, they, like we sweat, they transpire through the stomata. But at one point, the wine realizes too that with their hormones, it will shut down the stomata and it will not transpire anymore. On the bottom of the leaf, they have like you have the stomatas, which are holes which can open and close, and through there CO2 can get in and water can evaporate. And because we do have a lot of water limitation, I wanted to look at how we can help the plants not lose as much water during the heat. That's why I sprayed different treatments and looked at what differences we see with that. So I sprayed pinolene, which basically forms a film above the stomata, and it does not, like, it helps not to lose, like, evaporate as much water. So, and then I also sprayed kaolin, which is more of a clay-like film, and it's white, and it helps, because it's white, helps reflect the light, and thus it keeps the plant cooler. And then I also had biostimulants, which affect the plant more from the inside. So they help, sometimes they help growth. They also have reported to help with photosynthesis when it's heat, like the heat is bad, like when during heat stress. And also, there are a lot of different biostimulants, and they all act in different ways. Sometimes they will grow big faster, and you know. So to basically look at it from 3 different angles. One, to kind of help the plant just drain itself, then also like one to help it cool and reflect stuff, and one to basically help it protect from the inside.
So these chemicals that you mentioned, pinolene, kaolin, can they be harmful for consumption at all? Like, not as in like pesticide or like consumption. I would not eat them. But they're all biological compounds. Not compounds, but materials, how do you say? I don't know. So
they're not very harmful.
Okay.
And I think that's why they're a good solution. But overall, you can only do so much to help the plant. Those are all coping mechanisms in a way, like help support the wine. But yeah, it's not really what will help them, because in the end, what I saw too is like irrigation helps just so much more. So the wines, of course, need their water, and all the treatments can help a bit, but they cannot help fully.
So what I understand, Pinoline is something that you spray and it stops the water evaporation from the plant so that it can retain more water?
It does not fully stop it, but
to a degree.
Yeah, to a degree it stops it, and it helps a lot when it's hot.
Mm-hmm. One of my questions was, instead of using Pinoline or any other methods to reduce water evaporation, why don't we just give them more water? Or are we taking these steps so that we don't have to give more water? Yeah,
basically, especially when I'm thinking about my regions in Austria, we do have a big lake which is drying out, and a lot of the surrounding areas of that lake is vineyards, and they get that water from there. And so we do have a lot of water scarcity in a lot of regions. And if we just continue watering the plants, at one point, if we don't have a lot of water, people will not be like, oh yeah, you can take the water to water all the wines, but we will not have enough to drink. It's already a lot of the summers we are not allowed to water just the plants we have in our garden. And then why will we make wine if it's not a needed product? It's not something we need for survival.
Yes.
So rather water than some other agricultural products with the water we have than wines. So in a way, that's what I was thinking too, that we need to find solutions other than just watering them. Plus, irrigation systems are very expensive, and not every viticulturalist, every winemaker can or winery can afford to get irrigation systems. For example, at home, I don't have irrigation systems, but if I say, oh, this is a hot summer, I can easily go and buy some kaolin or Pinoline and spray it. The cost is way lower, but the effect is different. I still think irrigation is more effective, but I'm very hopeful that we will find some stuff in the future that will be more helpful for plants, not just vines,
So thank you for explaining about Pinoline and kaolin, which are basically stress mechanisms for plants. Do you think there is a stress relationship between plants and humans, or can you connect these two?
I would not call it a stress relationship, but I think we can see how we can help a plant adapt from stress, or help work with stress, and we can use the lessons we get from the plants to our own life as well. I think that's something that fascinates me a lot as well. So I think when you look at Pinoline, it kind of helps the plant not drain as much and evaporate as much water. And I think that's something we can do with our energy too. Think about what is taking our energy, who is taking our energy. Are certain people not actually giving us energy? Is it just taking and taking? Maybe take the lesson and apply some Pinoline and remove the things that are just draining you. And kaolin, it reflects the light, so maybe in stress, think of, people or in the office sometimes are stressed, other people, and we will take on that stress. Maybe try rather reflecting that, the plant with the kaolin on top, than taking up everything and making it your own stress. Because a lot of the time the stress will go from one person to another person. You can see it even at home when somebody is pissed. the next person will start to be pissed and someone goes and then they bring it to the workplace. Maybe take a lesson from Caroline.
Yes.
And for the biostimulants, I also think those can give us a lesson to like nourish ourselves properly. Like if we didn't sleep enough, we don't eat well, I think that also affects our lives a lot and we don't show up as we want to. So I think there's always a lot we can combine in the nature. Like we can always think of what the nature does in certain situations and take a lesson from there.
Yes.
So that's very interesting to me to like reflect parts from different ways in like things of different parts in your life.
Yeah, no, that's actually very interesting. When people are working in different fields, they try to learn something from their field, and this is a very good lesson from viticulture to be Caroline and don't let negative energies.
Yeah, to reflect some sunlight, because Caroline doesn't try to change the sunlight. I'm not gonna try to change other people, but I don't have to have it affect me. I can stay cool. I don't have to heat up as well, you know?
Yeah. And pinoline is, it's for reducing loss, which means you are...
I think I see more, to like try not to give all your energy to projects and things that actually don't move you further.
Yes.
And not always think of like, I'm gonna do more and more and more.
Yeah.
Reduce and look at like what, we cannot always give more and more energy, or we cannot do more work, be more disciplined, which is all good, but at one point we have to take a step back as well, and then we will actually be more productive. That's what I've seen for myself, because I'm stressing a lot sometimes, and if I'm like doing less, or even with working out, I like to push myself very hard, but then it doesn't do any good for my body. And if I sometimes take a step back, I will see more rewards from that too, to not.
Another thing I was going to ask was about the impact of AI, because AI is literally impacting every field these days. Have you seen or implemented any AI in viticulture yet?
Not so much. Like viticulture is still a lot with the nature, but if I'm talking to some people, they're very hopeful and they're using it. It's more used for programming, more things that we can use to measure then later the plants. It's not really used, maybe also in machinery, I would say, that you will have AI a lot. Also with berry sorting and stuff like this, there's been some stuff and there will be a lot. So it's more considering machinery, but other than that, I think the plant is still the plant. I don't know. And I don't think viticulturalists will work too much with AI. Maybe, they can of course use it as a search engine as well.
Do you think that the jobs in viticulture will be safe from the impact of AI, that it's making on a lot of office jobs?
I think safer, not all of them. Like just vineyard workers, maybe at one point you might not need as many, but I think that is very, very far in the future, not like office workers. AI can replace them sooner, or like if one person retires, people will not hire another one because people can take up more workload with AI helping them. That you will not see in viticulture this fast. For that you have to have the right machinery, and then the winery has to be able to afford the machinery. So I think people's jobs in these places, I think viticulture work is still a blue collar work, it's not a white collar work. So white collar workers, I think they will have problems in a way, and you can consider viticulture work more as a blue collar work, but I think that's not the pressing issue here. The issue is more that people are not drinking as much wine anymore. People are looking out more for their bodies, for their health. And the younger generation is not drinking as much as the older generation. We have seen all over the world drinking going down, like people are drinking less. So I think more the industry will be affected by that. It's hard to sell wine. And if the winery cannot sell the wine, then like the viticulturalists will also have less to do and less grapes to grow. Yeah. So it's also not a bright future, but I don't think AI is the culprit here, like is the, what's at fault that something will not work out.
So for people who are being more health conscious and are stopping to drink wine or consume alcohol, do you have any benefits of drinking wine that might make them interested in drinking?
Well, red wine has a lot of antioxidants and we want those, like for, like, how do you explain, like for especially blood clots and stuff, you can loosen them up with the antioxidants you get from the anthocyanins from like red grapes, like red wine grape-like skins. So it's not that unhealthy, and they should also drink wine, not because like it's healthy or something, because I think they're missing out if they're not experiencing the flavors of food and wine. I'm not telling them to drink amounts of wine and like get drunk. That I don't think is healthy. But if you look at a lot of old people from those, how are the regions called? Blue regions? No. Do you know?
No.
There are some regions in the world, also in Italy, for example, where people get really old and they drink every day almost, So I don't think it's that harmful. And the young people should really try to not drink wine for the purpose of getting drunk, but trying to think about what I'm drinking, what I'm sensing, what does it taste like. I think it can be very interesting and open so many worlds. Sometimes a wine can bring you back to a day where you're like, oh, this smell remembers me of that day. And I think that's beautiful that you can get something from a product in which there is a lot of love and work in it as well. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that was really great. What do you think people must misunderstood about viticulture?
Well, I think they underestimate viticulture a lot. I think they don't think that it's that complex. After all, the plant will just grow itself as well if you just leave it. But not always in a good way. You will not have a good product. And in the end, we want to get a good product, a good wine that we can actually enjoy. And we want to help the wine survive, the grape wine. And that's a lot of work. And a lot of hours. And it's also a little bit more complex than people think sometimes. There's a lot more behind this. The plants are fascinating, but also not that simple, I would say.
Interesting.
I don't know if that helped.
So next time someone drinks a glass of wine, what is something that they should pay more attention to, which they usually ignore?
Of course, the flavors, the aromas. They should really smell the wine and think of what they're smelling here. Of course, you can appreciate the color and everything, but try figuring out what can I smell here. And then when you drink it, what do I taste here? Is it something that I remember from somewhere? And that's something you can take with you when you go shopping, when you're cooking. I think you should always smell what you're taking into your mouth, smell the apple. And then again, when you smell the wine, maybe you smell apple. The same with berries. How does the berry smell? I think it opens us up to another world if we actually use our senses, because we have we got the senses for a reason, I think, and why not appreciate what we have, our sight, our nostrils and everything, the smell.
Can one small mistake ruin the whole crop for a season?
Of course. That's why I think it's very, for example, in the vineyard here that we had, it was very hot and there was no protection to the grapes. Yeah. So they sprayed kaolin, for example, a bit too late, and this cost them a lot of yield, a lot of sunburn, because it was very hot and it was just too much for the wine to take. So, yeah, just small things that can change a lot, from pruning to anything else, it's you can get a disease when you don't spray, especially in Austria we have that a lot. If you don't spray at the correct time, you will have a disease and your whole crop might be gone. So that's why I'm saying it's not that easy, it's complex. You have to it doesn't help you if you spray that many times. If you don't spray at the correct time.
Timing is
very important. Weather is very important. You always have to be up to date on everything that is happening. And you cannot, it's not easy to take vacation, you have to know. You have to be up to date. Know what's happening in your vineyard.
Yeah. That was all very insightful. Now, this is my first podcast. I want to make a tradition in this show that when a guest, just before leaving, I'll ask them if there is any piece of advice that they got from someone that stuck with them. So,
some recent advice I got from an 80-year-old. He told me the present isn't called a present for no reason. So I think that was a very nice advice. Be more in the present, cherish what we got, because we don't know if we're gonna be here tomorrow. And just also try not to stress as much and to enjoy what you're having. There's always a lot going on, and we can looking at myself, I can think too much about the future or stress about what's going on now, but I'm not actually living in the moment. And also this experience here in Australia has taught me that again. Sometimes I'll lose myself and I forget to be in the present. That's why I thought it was a very nice, very short advice. Be in the present, because it's a present.
It's a present, like a gift.
A gift, it's your gift.
Yeah, that was very nice.
I agree.
And thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. It was very nice being here. Thanks for having me.
Is there anything you think we have missed and you would like to talk?
No, I think I think we did good.
Okay.